Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting straight to the heart of something really vital for anyone looking to grow. That's understanding and, well, cultivating your growth mindset. The material you shared, it really dives deep into this, and we've pulled out some incredibly useful strategies, things you can actually practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this isn't about, those fleeting self-help trends. We're really focusing on the core ideas of a growth mindset.
Yeah.
It's a concept powerfully laid out by psychologist Carol Dweck.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's the belief, the conviction that your abilities, your intelligence, they aren't just fixed.
Right, not set in stone from birth.
No,
Yeah.
they can be developed, strengthened
Mm-hmm.
through, effort, learning, and this is key, persistence, resilience.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack that big difference because Dweck contrasts this with a fixed mindset, right?
The fixed mindset is that belief that your qualities, your talents, they're just innate, unchangeable.
And you can really see the difference in how someone reacts to, say, a setback, like maybe failing a test or not getting a job they wanted.
Oh, definitely. Someone with that fixed mindset, they might immediately think, well, I guess I'm just not smart enough.
Yeah.
Or, I'll never be good enough for that.
It sounds really limiting, like a final judgment.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It often leads to that feeling of just inadequacy. And maybe even avoiding challenges altogether because you're scared of proving those limitations, right?
Yeah. But the growth mindset flips that.
Completely flips it.
Yeah.
Same situation, failing the test, missing the job, but the thought process is different. It's more like, okay, that didn't work out. What can I actually learn here? What could I do differently? What strategy failed me? The setback isn't a label. It's data, information.
And that shift, just how you interpret it, that seems like it would have a massive impact over time on how you handle things, how much you actually, evolve.
Profound impact, yeah. It really dictates how you navigate not just failures, but successes too. And ultimately, your potential for growth.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Like when you hit something difficult, is your first instinct to pull back, think, I can't? Or is it more, okay, what's the angle here? What's the lesson?
That's a great question for everyone listening to ask themselves. And the really encouraging thing, which the material really highlights, is that growth mindset isn't like genetic.
Right. You're not just born with it or without it.
Exactly. It's a skill. It's a way of thinking you can actually cultivate, strengthen. So, our goal today is really to get into the how you can foster more of that growth thinking day to day.
Okay. Practical steps. I like it. And the material gets into the science a bit too, which I found fascinating. Neuroscience actually backs this up. Our brains can change.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just motivational talk. The concept is neuroplasticity. And it's pretty amazing. Our brains have this incredible capacity to adapt and reorganize themselves throughout our lives.
Well, it's not like you can't teach an old dog new tricks at all.
Not even close. Things like learning a new skill, a language, an instrument, even just consciously working on changing your thought patterns.
Right.
That physically creates new connections in your brain. It rewires things. Studies show, for instance, learning a new language can actually increase gray matter. It physically reshapes our cognitive abilities.
Wow. So it's not just psychological, it's physical.
Exactly. It's incredibly empowering. Our potential isn't fixed.
And Dweck's research on praise really brings this home, doesn't it? The sources mentioned how praising kids for effort versus intelligence makes a huge difference.
A massive difference. Students praised for their effort, for the process, for the strategies they used. They showed much more motivation. They performed better long term.
Compared to kids just told, oh, you're so smart.
Right. Because praising intelligence alone can kind of foster that fixed mindset. Kids might become afraid to try hard things because what if they fail? Does that mean they're not smart anymore?
Ah, I see. It creates pressure.
Exactly. But praising the process,
Mm-hmm.
the hard work, the learning strategies,
Yeah.
that builds resilience. It makes them okay with struggling because struggling is part of learning. It fosters a genuine love for the challenge itself. And, it has to be genuine praise, not just empty words, recognizing specific effort.
Okay, so the big takeaway here is potential isn't fixed. Learning, growth. It's always possible with the right approach and effort. So we understand the what and the why. How do we actually start doing this, cultivating it in ourselves?
Well, the first and maybe the most crucial step is just awareness. Becoming really aware of your own internal chatter, that inner voice.
Especially when things get tough, when you face a challenge.
Exactly. What are those automatic thoughts that pop up? You need to start listening to that commentary.
Because as the material points out, we all carry these limiting beliefs, don't we? These narratives about ourselves.
Totally. Things like, oh, I'm just not creative, or
Yeah.
math, nope, always been bad at it, or public speaking, not for me. And the key is recognizing these are just stories. They feel true, but they're often just assumptions we've repeated until they feel like facts. They're not objective reality.
Okay, so recognize the stories. Then what?
Then you work on rewriting them. This is where reframing comes in. And the sources had some great simple examples like that thought, I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
Just add one tiny word,
Yeah.
yet. I'm not good at this yet.
Huh. That does change the feeling of it. It opens a door.
It completely changes the implication. It implies future possibility. Gross. Or instead of, ugh, I always mess things up.
Which feels so final.
Right. Reframe it to something like, okay, I'm learning here. I'm figuring this out and improving. It sounds subtle, maybe, but these language shifts have a surprisingly big impact on your mindset.
It's not just playing with words then. It actually changes how you perceive the situation and yourself.
Absolutely. Language shapes our reality. And then another tool the sources mentioned is journaling. When you catch a negative belief,
Write it down.
write it down. And then actively challenge it. Ask yourself, is this really 100% true? And maybe even more powerful, what evidence do I have that the opposite might be true?
Ooh, I like that. Forcing yourself to find counter evidence puts the inner critic on trial, kinda.
Exactly. It helps you dismantle those unfounded assumptions.
Okay, so we're tuning into our thoughts, reframing the negative ones. What's next in building this mindset, according to the material?
The next big piece is about goals, how we set them. A lot of us focus on the outcome, right? The end result.
Like, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to earn X amount of money.
Exactly. Outcome goals. And those are fine for direction, but a growth mindset really thrives when we focus more on process-oriented goals.
Okay, process goals. So that's more about the journey, the habits.
Precisely. It's about the systems you put in place.
Yeah.
The daily actions. So instead of just, I want to write a book.
Which can feel huge and overwhelming.
Right. The process goal would be something like, I will write for 30 minutes every single day.
Okay.
Or instead of, I want that promotion, maybe it's, I will complete one relevant professional development course this quarter. See the difference? You're focused on the actions you control.
Yeah, that feels much more manageable. And it directly ties into the idea of developing skills through effort.
That's the core of it. Process goals keep your focus squarely on growth, on the daily improvement, on the learning. The results tend to follow naturally over time if the process is sound.
And the sources also mention celebrating the small stuff, like acknowledging when you stick to the process.
Yes, that's so important. Every time you hit that 30-minute writing goal or finish a course module, that's progress. That's growth in action. Recognizing that reinforces the behavior.
It builds momentum, I guess, instead of waiting for the huge, distant outcome.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from something potentially overwhelming to the achievable steps you're taking now. It strengthens that belief. Consistent effort works.
Okay, this leads into another really big and sometimes tough area, failure. The material really stresses that failure isn't the enemy of success.
Not at all. In fact, it's often an essential ingredient, an unavoidable part of the process if you're trying anything worthwhile.
Everyone successful has failed along the way.
Absolutely. Name anyone who's achieved something significant. They've stumbled, probably many times. The difference with a growth mindset is they don't let failure define them or stop them. They see it as, well, data again.
An opportunity to learn.
Exactly. A chance to refine their approach.
And the material suggested some specific questions to ask after a setback.
Yeah, really useful ones. Like, okay, what specifically can I learn from this? Not just vaguely, but specifically. What parts did I actually handle well? Because usually something went right.
Right, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly. And crucially, what can I do differently next time? It's about extracting the maximum learning.
And doing that consistently must build confidence, right? Even if you fail, you know you can learn and adapt.
It builds trust in your own ability to persevere. You know that even if things go wrong, you have the tools to analyze, adjust, and keep going.
There was also a point about embracing discomfort. That feeling uncomfortable is actually a sign of growth.
Yes, that's such a powerful reframe. When you feel uncomfortable, challenged, maybe a bit out of your depth, that often means you're stretching, you're pushing your boundaries.
And that's where the real learning happens.
Precisely.
Well,
growth rarely happens inside your comfort zone. So instead of recoiling from that discomfort, maybe we can learn to see it as a positive signal, like, okay, this feeling means I'm on the right track.
That's a big shift. Okay, so we're working on our inner game, our mindset, how we handle challenges. But what about the outside world? The people around us? The material mentioned environment matters too.
Hugely. It has a massive impact. Think about it.
Yeah.
If you're constantly surrounded by people who complain, focus on limits, give up easily.
That negativity can rub off.
It really can. It can subtly reinforce those fixed mindset ideas without you even realizing it.
But the flip side is true too, being around growth-minded people.
Absolutely. People who challenge you constructively, who support your learning, who celebrate the effort and the progress, not just the final win. That's incredibly motivating. It lifts you up.
So the advice is to be intentional about who you spend time with. Seek out mentors, maybe join groups.
Yeah, actively seek out mentors who embody that growth mindset. Join communities, mastermind groups, whatever works for you, where the focus is on development, on progress over perfection. There's that idea that you become like the people you spend the most time with. So choosing wisely is a really proactive way to nurture your own growth.
Makes sense. Now, this whole process, changing beliefs, building habits, facing failure, it's not instant, is it? The material stressed that.
Oh, definitely not. And that leads to the final, really crucial piece, self-compassion and patience.
Because it's easy to get discouraged if you slip up or don't see results immediately.
Exactly. Mindset change is a journey. It's gradual. There will be setbacks. Self-compassion means being kind to yourself during those times. Acknowledging it's hard work. It's not about making excuses, but about offering yourself the same empathy you'd give a good friend who is struggling.
Yeah, we're often much harder on ourselves. And patience. Recognizing it takes time.
Crucial. Focus on the progress, however small, not on some impossible ideal of perfection. Remember those process goals. It's about the small steps, consistently.
Treat yourself like you'd treat a friend you believe in.
That's a perfect way to put it. Give yourself encouragement, empathy, and believe in your own potential for growth, even when it feels slow. Be patient.
Okay, so bringing this deep dive together,
Mm.
we've really covered a lot of ground on understanding and boosting your growth mindset. Just to recap the key takeaways from the material.
Mm.
Knowing what growth mindset is versus fix.
Right, the core definition.
Understanding the science that our brains can change neuroplasticity.
Super important.
Then the practical stuff. Spotting and actively reframing those limiting beliefs. That yet trick is powerful.
Mm.
Shifting to set process-oriented goals, focusing on the actions,
The daily habits.
learning to embrace challenges and failures as actual learning fuel, asking those key questions,
Seeing failure differently.
recognizing the impact of your environment, surrounding yourself with supportive, growth-minded people,
Absolutely key.
and finally, being kind and patient with yourself throughout the whole journey, self-compassion.
Couldn't agree more. And it really is vital to remember this is ongoing. It's not like you achieve growth mindset and you're done. It's a practice. But the more you consciously apply these strategies, the more natural they become.
Yeah.
And the impact on your growth, personal and professional, can be really significant.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to take away. Just take a moment right now. Think about one specific limiting belief you hold. Could you start challenging that one? Or maybe what's one small process-oriented goal you could put in place, like today or tomorrow, just to start actively nurturing your own growth? That first step is everything.